Printmaking is an artistic process that transfers an image from one surface onto another surface. Most often, this surface is paper or fabric. Traditional printmaking techniques include woodcut, etching, engraving, and lithography, while modern artists have expanded available techniques to include screen printing. Printmaking allows an artist to produce multiples of the same piece, which we call a print. Each print is considered an original work of art and is referred to as an impression, not a copy. For this project, we will be using foam printing plates to create our matrix. In printmaking, a matrix is the term we use when we reference the surface that can be manipulated to hold your ink and transfer an image. Let's take a look at our process. The type of print you are creating is called a relief print. This means that you are removing part of the printing plate and creating negative space. When you print your design, you'll be able to see the areas of the original surface that is still raised. If you were to make a print of the printing plate that you see on the screen, the orange surface would leave an image on your paper like a stamp. To prepare for your printing, you have planned your image that you want to use by sketching it out on paper, transferring the image to your foam plate, and preparing the foam plate for printing by making indentations and removing the elements from the matrix that you do not want to print for your final design. Let's take a look at some of the materials that you'll need. You'll need practice printing paper and your final printing paper, your printing plate, printing ink, some water, maybe a little paintbrush, paper towel, a plastic tray of some sort, you could use a paper plate as well, and a sponge. The next thing you want to do is give yourself enough working space, so spread things out. Okay, and then what you're going to see happen, I'm going to open up my printing ink and prepare that to put on my printing plate. Dumping just a little tiny amount onto that plastic lid that I have. I'm going to take my dry sponge, soak it in the water. You're going to want to mix a little bit of water with that printing ink. I'm going to take my sponge and I'm going to dab it into the paint, kind of blot it on that plastic lid, and then I'm going to sponge that onto my printing plate. Notice I put a piece of scrap paper under the printing plate just to keep my surface clean. You don't want to get printing ink on a table surface or a desk surface. Make sure you do that. Continue this process of blotting the paint onto the styrofoam, okay, until you have a nice even coat on that printing plate. And then once you have that done, you're ready to do your practice prints. Okay, so put that in front of you, and your fingers are going to get a little bit dirty, but if you flip that upside down, okay, try to center it on your paper, and with a spoon, I'm burnishing the back of that, okay, to make sure that that surface catches on the orange paper underneath. If you don't have a spoon, you could use a brayer, some kind of a roller, or you can use your hands as well. One thing you're going to notice is that not all of the details caught on that orange paper. So what's nice about printing is that you can try it again. Okay, this time I'm adding a little bit more water. Okay, instead of blotting it over and over, I'm sort of moving it around a little bit differently onto that styrofoam printing plate, covering the areas that didn't pick up the ink on the orange paper, and we're going to try it again. Again, center that as best you can, and put pressure down on the back side of that styrofoam. Use a spoon, use your fingers, okay, to create that print. Now when I lift it up this time, you can see the details a little bit better, okay, and you can definitely notice a difference when you place them side by side. The next thing I want to demonstrate is what happens if you have text in your print. Okay, this is a student example of where the student wrote the word soda on their soda can, but they wrote it as if they were reading it correctly, so from left to right. So what happens, you put the ink on it, you flip it over and reverse it, the lettering is actually backwards, so you don't recognize that at all. This is just a great example of why it's really important to reverse or mirror your images on your actual printing plate, okay, before you print it or before you create any indentation marks. That goes with letters, numbers, or even asymmetrical logos that might be recognizable. And then when I remove that printing plate, you can see which one was actually created correctly. If you want to explore a little further in the printmaking process, try some different materials. Okay, you can, on your stamp, after you've cleaned it off and you've dried it, you could take Crayola markers or any kind of marker that you have and color it. Okay, you can use different colors if you wanted to. You do not have to, but you could use a combination of marker and paint. Okay, and just kind of see what happens and what you can come up with. No matter what materials you use, you still want to flip over that foam plate and put some pressure on the back side so the paper underneath picks up the ink. When I remove that printing plate, you'll notice that it turns out quite nicely. Okay, you could also experiment with something like watercolor paint if you have access to that. Here you have a close-up of the print that I made with the markers. You can always go back and make more than one, or you could change the colors. This was the one that I made with the watercolor. It didn't turn out that great, probably just needed to use a little bit less water. And then, of course, the print that we made with the black ink. Okay, I hope you have fun exploring, okay, and love this process as much as I do.